Today's Newsmakers, actor Rob Schneider finds Jesus, and will Scottish parents who refuse to transition their kids be jailed? That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, we begin with comedian Rob Schneider. The former Saturday Night Live star joins us to speak about his faith and the importance of forgiveness. Let's welcome Rob Schneider to Newsmakers. Rob, appreciate you joining me today. A lot to dive into. We're going to talk about Chip Chilla, but I want to talk about culture first because you had a post recently on X, formerly known as Twitter, where you talked about forgiveness and you talked about faith. And I have to tell you, I actually wrote a column about this because I thought it was incredibly moving what you wrote. What sparked that in you to share that message?
Well, a foundation in God. I think Jesus only lets you stray so much, and I think at a certain point, he grabbed me again and hugged me, and I think it's important to the feeling that I had and that foundation for whatever silly movies I've made, and for whatever reason people seem to think anything I say is interesting or funny. I guess people call it a platform. I don't know what you call it. I wanted them to if you are thinking about looking for something in life, a foundation that isn't in sand where it could be blown away. And if you have a family, then if you have that foundation in something beautiful and something like Christianity. I mean, there are other religions out there that say, well, kill your enemy, hate your enemy, and there are infidels. And we have a religion that says love your enemy, love thy neighbor as thyself. I think that's love others. I mean, what a beautiful way to go through life.
Well, and your message captured that. I mean, your message really captured when you went through each person and the types of people who maybe you were rallying against before during COVID, but you had this sort of reflective tone. It was really powerful seeing you juxtapose those things.
Well, there were people that very angered me. Thank you. When Bruce Springsteen, I didn't name names there. I shouldn't name names now, but when it made me so angry that he would eliminate or not allow and to exclude. And if anything in Christianity, it's welcoming everyone. There's no exclusion. It's not like, well, green-eyed people aren't allowed. So to exclude those people from his Broadway show it seemed to me, and then it seemed angry, and it made me angry. And then I had to dig underneath, what's that anger? And then I have to know, well, why is he angry? And why am I allowing myself to get angry? And where is the forgiveness there? And you have to know that what it is I can't interpret what other people are feeling. And a lot of what people were feeling was fear. And they're also feeling like they had to get along. And that's pretty common. And so if I am going to lead my life and be an example, as Christ compels us to do, then I have to do it. Even if it hurts, even if it stretches how I used to feel, and forgiveness. And once you forgive, the beautiful thing about forgiveness isn't the person, it's you. You end up feeling better.
I got to ask you because, being so vocal, you've had an incredible career. You've done everything. You're hilarious. You've made movies. You've done TV. I mean, you've done it all.
Thank you.
No, it's true. I mean, but how hard has it been? And maybe it hasn't been. How impacted have you been by being so vocal on faith, on policies, those sorts of things?
Well, I think I've been very lucky to have a career. I didn't, my parents didn't come in show business. My dad had a little tiny company where he did loans on second deeds of trust, and he worked out his own business. And he's the only one who graduated high school. His father could barely read, came from Prussia.
Wow.
My mother was, a World War II, traumatized World War II survivor of the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. So I was raised by, this. And so I don't feel any obligation to any ideology that is really not based in something to improve humanity. So I don't feel like I'm missing out or being excluded. I don't need their approval. I've made a very good living in show business, and I have been touring and doing stand-up comedy for most of the last 10 years. And I don't really get work in Hollywood anymore. And I don't feel like that's something I need. I mean, I made 50 movies. I mean, what was another 10 more? What's that going to do?
Right. Exactly. You've done it all. That's the thing, right? I mean, it's
that's why I've become a bludgeon for the, or become a people who have tried to attack me. Let them. I mean, what can they do? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about, the faith and Jesus Christ. If he came back, they would try to do the same thing again to him. Why? Because he forces you to look at your own lies, your own falsehoods, and what you are not living up to. I mean, that is and also at the same time releases you from guilt and releases you from the idea that you have to work this and do all these things to in your life from a place of servitude as opposed to a place of love.
Yeah.
And if you get there, then there's a certain strength to it. But that strength's going to be challenged because what it does is it forces other people to look at themselves. And it isn't a place that there's a reason why Christianity is attacked.
Oh, absolutely. You have to re-examine everything about yourself. And as you're saying, for Christians, once other people see that you have this thing, it convicts them, right? And then you've got this chain reaction of conviction that, it either yields people becoming believers or it yields an anger in people who are offended by that internally. They don't even realize why sometimes.
Well, they don't, but it does come from a place. I mean, what it does is it brings up things, and the stuff that it brings up is important because that's how Christ works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I have to tell you too, you have this fun new project, and, I could talk for 3 hours with you about this stuff.
It's important because I do think, like with the TV series Chip Chilla that we're doing on the Daily Wire, they realize that there is an indoctrination happening in the media that is undermining the last bastion of freedom in the world, truthfully, which is the United States of America. And if they can undermine that, then it can all go. Yeah. So it's important to maintain that. And what the Daily Wire Entertainment wants to do is entertain people in 48 states that are not California and New York. That is a powerful, powerful thing to do. And I'm very proud to be able to be with them so that people can watch this, the TV series and say, hey, I can relax. I don't have to watch it beforehand to see what, indoctrination is trying to happen from Hollywood. So in that sense, I'm very happy, and it's a pleasure to work with them.
Well, we're looking forward to pushing people there. Rob, we appreciate your time.
And by the way, the Daddy-Daughter Trip is a movie that's coming out it's a really nice little family movie. It's on Amazon downloads, and it's at Walmart. And I hope people get a chance to see that. It's available now.
You can also check out Rob Schneider's latest animated project, Chip Chilla. It's streaming on BentKey. Up next, we're chatting with a religious freedom advocate who has a dire warning for the West. This and more on Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel after the break. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Our next guest is Lois McClatchy Miller, a spokesperson for ADF International. She is warning about a new proposal in Scotland that she says could reportedly lead parents to be imprisoned if they refuse to comply with gender transitions for their children. Let's welcome Lois to the show to hear more about this issue. Well, we're here to talk about something quite shocking today. There are proposals in Scotland to potentially jail parents in worst-case scenarios who don't transition their children. Can you explain what's going on?
Sure. I mean, I think that headline is shocking enough, and you'd think that it was a joke or a piece of satire, but unfortunately, it is the reality in my country of Scotland. There are proposals that would ban so-called conversion therapy. Now, when we think of conversion therapy, we think of the 80s or before then. We think of terrible treatment of people being strapped up to electrodes or anything like that. And of course, that should be illegal, and it is already in Scotland. Any form of torture or abuse, physical abuse like that, is very much illegal in Scotland. But what this bill does is, although it says that it's about conversion therapy, it actually goes much, much further and intervenes in what a parent can advise a child, a pastor can advise a congregant, or anything like that. So one of the examples we have given in the legislation is if a parent were to more than once tell their child, say their 11-year-old son, that he was not allowed to wear a dress to school and lipstick and high heels and to dress, as a girl when he's a boy. If you were to tell your son more than once that he was not allowed to do that and to go and change, you could potentially be guilty of committing conversion therapy, of being coercive, and therefore face, a criminal trial and potential prison sentence of up to 7 years. So this is real. This is happening in Scotland, and right now it's open to consultation, and we're just hoping that Scottish people raise their voices and let the government know that this is not welcome.
Yeah, when it comes to a law being, or a bill being sort of open to consultation, how likely is it, and I know this is sometimes challenging to predict based on a lot of different factors, but in your view, how likely is it that something like this could become law?
Well, the political makeup that we have at the moment in Scotland is that we have the Scottish National Party, who are behind the bill in governance, and they have teamed up with the Green Party, who would also be very likely ideologically aligned with the bill, and they have the majority of seats in Parliament together in a coalition. So when the government proposes a bill, there's a very strong chance that it will be pushed through with the full weight behind it. It's very difficult to challenge, but not impossible. I mean, we've seen situations before in Scotland where similarly shocking pieces of legislation have been challenged either in courts or through the voice of the people, and there has been either amendments or bills have been dropped. So it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of courage from people in Scotland to stand up and challenge, and it could take a lengthy court battle potentially. But of course, we're not there yet. We're still at the very, very early stages of this legislation. It's only just open to public consultation. It has a lot of rounds through Parliament before it gets anywhere near becoming law. So now really is the time to act to make sure that those concerns are heard.
Now, final question for you. It's very easy for people who aren't in Scotland, who are in other countries, to sort of look at this and say, oh, what does it matter? I don't live there. And yet we see it's almost like dominoes with these sorts of laws. Why should people in every country right now be paying attention to proposals like this?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen it already with hate speech laws over the last few years. Scotland brought in a hate speech law in 2021. We've seen it spread across Europe. We've seen it in Finland, in Ireland now, and spreading across the continent. And although America, of course, you have your great First Amendment, that doesn't mean that you're censorship free. And we see battles for free speech occurring across the states. And it's really important that as Europeans, as the West, who are meant to be the home of human rights, the home of having that foundation of every individual having freedom of speech and freedom of religion, we need to support that across the world because as countries fall, the pressure on other countries to conform to this new narrative and to conform to these essentially human rights abuses, taking away freedom of speech and the right to parent, the right to have a family and private family life. As if we don't challenge them outside of our country, how are we supposed to challenge them internally when they come to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I so appreciate you coming on today, breaking this all down, and looking forward to having you on again very soon.
Dory, thanks so much for covering the story.
The consultation period, the review period for this controversial bill, goes until April 2nd. We'll continue to monitor the story as it unfolds. And when we come back on the other side of the break, we will have a fascinating look at one group's efforts to bring faith and prayer to public school students. This is Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Welcome back to Newsmakers. For our final segment, we're sitting down with Joel Penton. Joel is the founder and CEO of LifeWise Academy, and this is an incredible organization that is finding ways to bring faith and prayer back into public school students' lives. Let's welcome Joel to Newsmakers. So Joel, I want to dive right into LifeWise Academy. This is your organization, and it's incredibly unique for a variety of reasons, helping public school kids learn about the Bible during the school day. Tell us a little bit about your work and how you got started.
Yeah, well, you said it. It's Bible education for public school students during school hours. We started in 2019. We were inspired by a program that started in my hometown. In 2012, people in my hometown started what's known as a released time religious instruction program. Very few people are aware that in 1952, the Supreme Court ruled that public school students can be released from public school during school hours to attend religious classes if the program meets three criteria. If it's number one, off school property, number two, privately funded, and number three, with parental permission. It was ruled on in 52. Now 26 states in the nation have laws about release time, but very few people are aware of it. In my hometown, they found out they could do this, and so they launched a program, started holding classes in a renovated home next to the elementary school. Their goal was to have 30% of kids sign up because that's how many kids go to church. But to their surprise, the very first year, 60% of kids signed up. And by year three, 95% of the kids in the entire public elementary school were enrolled. And so then in 2018, they reached out to me. I'm from the town. It's called Van Wert, Ohio is the name of the town. And I was leading a ministry to public school students. It was a traveling speaking ministry. But they said, Joel, help us answer the question how we can have this wonderful program that's entirely legal, that's incredibly impactful, but there isn't a program like this in every community coast to coast. Why hasn't everyone heard about this? We recognized so many barriers to entry to get a program off the ground. And so we launched in 2019, and it's been a whirlwind. We launched with 2 schools, but as of today, we're serving 133 schools across 4 states.
133 schools across 4 states. And the logistics of this, is it one time a week that students come to these offsite areas? What's sort of the logistics of this?
Yeah, good question. It does tend to be once a week, and you can think of it as it's normally part of the specials rotation. So in the same way that a kid will get art class once a week, maybe gym class once or twice a week, library, they'll have an opportunity as part of that weekly rotation to attend a Bible class, LifeWise Academy in our case. And so then we'll rotate students through. It's usually 1 or 2 classes at a time are released to our facility. And so we have a program, for example, now in Northwest Ohio, that there's 1,000 students in the elementary school. There's 900 students in LifeWise. And so it's 2 classrooms at a time, 5 times a day, 5 days a week. Kids are rolling through. We pick them up on the big red LifeWise bus, take them to the YMCA where we teach them the Bible, bring them back and pick up more kids.
Do you ever hit, because obviously the confusion over the separation of church and state really confounds a lot of people, and it leads them to say things like, well, this can't be legal. And do you hit those roadblocks with schools initially before they understand what the law actually says?
Well, we hit it with everybody. I mean, there's probably people listening to this right this moment that still, even though we've said during school hours about 5 times, they're still thinking this is a before or after school program. That's what we find, is that we might say it 20 times and still at the end, someone raises their hand and says, is this before or after school? Because we've been so programmed to think of this separation of church and state, which we think means kids can't learn the Bible during school hours. And it doesn't mean that at all. In fact, release time, what we do is a beautiful manifestation of the concept of the separation of church and state, and that students are literally removed from the state school in the middle of the school day, and they're separated from it physically. But usually the resistance we get is just people not understanding on the front end. So maybe not even hearing it because we've been so programmed, so not understanding what we're saying, and then having the misconception that, oh, that must not be legal. However, it's simply a matter of printing off the Supreme Court ruling from 52 or one of these 26 laws specifically about this practice. And people start to wake up, and a lot of Christians start to have the same response I had, and that is, how have I never heard of this? This seems to be the greatest missed opportunity of the American church to reach the next generation.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful as Christians to not push our conviction on other people, because not everybody's going to have the same conviction. Some people, I mean, you're in an amazing position. You're homeschooling, yet here you are serving the public schools more than almost anybody else is. And I think this is such a complicated issue, but I think it's incredible what you're doing. You've written a book, as I mentioned, During School Hours, where you detail all of this, the history that we were talking about before, as well as what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about what you're hoping people take away from the book.
Well, I'll be real transparent. I want people to read the book and then engage with LifeWise. I mean, we want to see kids in every community, coast to coast, Maine to California, might as well add Hawaii to that, reached with the gospel. And there's a very practical way to do it. When we were first explaining this to people in 2018, and we basically had an idea, it felt like we were saying, hey, here's this thing that hasn't really worked well for 70 years, but we feel like we can make it work. And, we had to sell people on that. But now the evidence is there. I mean, the concept is proven. We're going to launch in over 100 schools next year. And we've sat down with now how many dozens of superintendents who have said, yes, you can do this with my school. So I would love people to read the book to certainly become informed of the history, certainly become informed of the practicals, I'm sure they would want to kick the tires on any type of program or ministry opportunity. But at the end, I want them to do it. I want them to go to lifewise.org, add their name to the list. I want them to then forward that link and get 50 signatures in their community. And let's see students coast to coast hear the gospel.
Well, I so appreciate your time. Again, the book is During School Hours. Hope to have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
You can head on over to lifewise.org to find out more about this organization. And we'll be right back with more Newsmakers in just a moment. That's all for Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head over to the CBN News YouTube channel for the full interviews that you saw on today's episode. Plus, you can check out our new daily Newsmakers podcast. We feature one full interview every single day. Be sure to subscribe to that on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you all back here again next week.